Hello, everybody. It is a Blue Drake, and today we are going to be doing the first video in a series of videos that I'll probably start doing. We're gonna test this out. So we're gonna see if this video actually like works out and if it's a good idea. And depending on whether it's a good idea or not, I'll either continue doing these released specifically this way, or I will release them privately on my website, just for my internal community. But it is something that I really want to talk about. And I'm actually happy as YouTube continues to make like new features and new systems available. So for instance, I realized that now I can post a video on my community feed, but I can make it unlisted, so that way it's not subjected to the algorithm. So the algorithm doesn't actually push it everywhere. So that means everybody who probably wants or needs to see it from specifically my followers, whether my followers want to see it or like me or not, because I have a lot of people that follow me that don't like me. That's always very, very confusing. But regardless of that, I can post it here, and it won't be subjected to the algorithm, which means it won't have like a whole bunch of people who don't care or don't really know what the hell we're talking about watching it, and then I'll get a torrent of comments being like, what the fuck is this video? Why'd you post it? So this way I can keep it localized here, which is pretty cool. Well, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a video called Haterology. I did a video on this a long time ago, but I released it publicly. I released it in a way where anybody could see it, and like I said before, I don't think that's a really good way to do it, because then everybody comes to your channel and they're like, I subscribed for gameplay, not this, what the hell is this? And then they get mad or whatever. So this way, we can hopefully dive back into this again, because I do enjoy making these kinds of videos, and then we can go from there. But we're going to be doing a series called Haterology, and this is basically where I either take a look at or like respond to all of the like stereotypical hater comments. And there's a couple of reasons why I want to do this, because I know we've had like a conversation about this before. We did a live stream talking about like comments from these kinds of people. And there's some people that say that like I shouldn't really focus on it at all. There's some people that say like I shouldn't pay attention to it. But then I think there's also a lot of people that understand, like, not all of these are just like blatant hate comments. Like, some of them actually bring up decent points that I've wanted to talk about or I think are interesting to talk about. And some of them, they're just kind of indicative of a lot of either problems or points or issues that I would love to talk about. Either sometimes they'll bring up issues that are actually poignant, but they'll do it in like a dick way, which is like a conversation in itself. Just like, I do that too sometimes. Sometimes they're like blatantly like a dick, and it's not necessarily that they bring up like a good point, but like they'll either be from like a certain kind of community, and I want to point out, be like, hey, look, this is the kind of attitude that's coming from this community that I think is having like bad consequences. Like, for instance, the Star Citizen community. There's a lot of like Star Citizen kind of like super fans that go around, and you can just spot them now. Just like when you see your comment, you're like, there's one. You click on the profile, you see, and then you see like they have a forum account and they're like super active on the Star Citizen forums, and they just happen to go. It's funny. It's just you start seeing correlations. But that's one of the reasons I want to make this video. If you guys like it, let me know in the comments if you want to see more. If you don't like it, tell me if this is a terrible idea and I should never do it again. But we're gonna at least do this first one. So I mean, obviously, I have all these comments like saved, so I can just like look at them, so it's easier for us to do this video. But here's the first one. This was a comment on our video about Spatial OS. And JD says, 20 minutes of weasel and buzzwords, pure marketing talk containing nothing of substance, designed to entice the ignorant. Voxels revolutionized nothing. They're used little in development and even less in engine, save for a handful of niche, flat indie titles. Seamless MMOs existed when you were still blocking your phone line while you played them. And if I hear you squeal scalability one more time, I will beat you with a book containing the several thousand developers that squealed before you and subsequently failed to deliver. You have shown nothing, and that is what I figured the entire thing amounts to. And obviously, I mean, this is a brutal as hell comment. It's actually kind of funny. The hitting me with the book thing. I was like, was funny. And sometimes I can't tell, you know, like, because sometimes I get comments like this, and I think like, oh shit, these guys hate me. But then I actually end up like talking to them, and I find out that that's not what it is at all, and they're just like super nerdy about this stuff, and things just like trigger them. For instance, I mean, I have a couple of people that I work with now that were like would say something like this, and then we end up working together. But I want to. So let's take a look at this. So the first thing he says is he says 20 minutes of weasel and buzzwords, pure marketing talk. That is something that I get accused of a lot, and I can't tell if it's actually a problem or not. I definitely am big on kind of like creating entertaining videos, creating videos that are, and it is just fun. Like for a lot of people when they watch my videos, like it's fun to kind of like nerd out about stuff and talk about the buzzwords. Because one of the things that I think is I don't think buzzwords are always buzzwords. Like when you talk about scalability, when you talk about like decentralization, there's a lot of people that actually use those words in buzzwordy kind of ways, but there's also a lot of products and there's a lot of systems that do focus on those kinds of things and do those kinds of things. And I don't think that those words should necessarily become bad words because they're rooted in truth somewhere. Because like when you look at scalability, literally all scalability means is that you can do it again and again and again forever, but not have to worry about like an exponential growth in expenses. And that's a big problem for a lot of products. Like there's a lot of products out there where you can do it on a small scale and actually afford it, but as you continue to grow the demand and as you continue to grow it's not a linear scalability, it's an exponential scalability. So when you look at games like Squad, when you look at games like Arma, like the reason you can't have 20,000 players in Arma isn't because like, oh, it's a linear curve. It's because every single player you add, it gets exponentially more it actually gets exponentially less cost effective. It gets exponentially less efficient. And I think that's a big question that a lot of people have. You know, like when you look at products, when you look at systems that focus on scalability and try to answer that question of scalability, it's like, hey, look, can we do this? Can we design something where if you're to do more of it, it's a linear progression instead of an exponential progression? And once you solve that, even on a small scale, like even on a small scale, if you prove scalability, that's where massive innovation comes from. And I think a lot of people kind of get distrustful of it because a lot of like, let me put it this way. When you look at Minecraft, Minecraft is scalable. You can walk in an infinite direction in any direction, and the map scales in that direction forever. And there's a lot of people that take that for granted now, where they're like, oh, of course. But when I was a kid and that happened, that was huge. That was massive. That was like blew everybody's mind. You're like, what? Infinite maps in every direction? Because all of the games we were used to, for whatever reason, were very limited in space. So I think it's easy to say that like, oh yeah, you know, like innovation has never happened or everybody's lied to us all the time. But when you look back through the past like couple of decades and you see the kind of like innovations that have happened, like it's not like massively amazing things have not happened. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things out there, and there's a lot of developers that kind of like use buzzwords and try to mislead people, and that might even account for like the vast majority of the videos that you see. Like, whenever you see like a talk or somebody trying to promote a new technology, yeah, it might be bogus, but the few times that it isn't has had massive implications throughout the industry, and I think that's one of the reasons these things are really still cool to talk about. Um, Anyways, but let us continue. So he says, pure marketing talk containing nothing of substance, designed to entice the ignorant. I think that's a genuine fear. I mean, that's coming from the same thing. You know, like when you look at a Euclidean created the infinite detail point cloud system, where, you know, you compose objects out of atoms instead of like traditional polygons. And they made a lot of massive claims of what their technology was capable of doing. And the funny thing is that they never actually released that product. And I think that leads a lot of people to be skeptical. It's actually funny because I saw Euclidean at a tech conference recently, and they were actually showcasing this new piece of technology that they've created, and it's like a holodeck. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Look in Euclidean. Apparently, the next thing they're working on is a holodeck. Whether that's a buzzword or not, whether that's true or not, they actually had a booth there. I should have gone in and actually experienced it. I wanted to, but I really had to get to work. It was really cool though. But there's a lot of stuff like that where I think there's a real reason to be skeptical, because there are situations where people have kind of like misled people in order for some kind of hidden agenda. But that's also not always the case. And even with Euclidean, Euclidean created this whole idea of like, oh yeah, we can achieve infinite detail, and then they never released that product. That doesn't mean that they necessarily didn't accomplish that. There's a lot of reasons to not release a product. For instance, they might have licensed it out to a private company. They may have gotten a venture capitalist fund. There's a lot of companies that release a video like that and then attract a lot of attention and get a lot of money, and they don't release the product not because they weren't capable of doing what they were capable of doing, but because a private company out there was able to pay them more and needed it more than a commercial release, or the people who would purchase the release commercially would actually want or need it. I'm not saying that that's what happened with Euclidean, but I have seen that happen a lot. In fact, even when you look at Spatial OS has actually gotten a lot of venture capitalist funding recently, because the idea of what they're creating is so provocative and so like interesting that there's a lot of funding that comes from non-commercial sources and non-crowdfunding sources of people who are actually interested in their tech. In fact, one of the things that I have been researching is their use of Spatial OS outside of gaming. And apparently, one of the ways that they're using Spatial OS outside of gaming is to simulate electrical grids for cities in order to optimize electrical usage, or like to optimize like the flow of power to different areas of a city in order to kind of like decrease waste. So for instance, like everybody gets home at a certain time and they all turn on their ovens or their TVs or something like that, and there's a massive power surge. You could actually create a system that simulates those electrical grids of an entire city in real time, in order to kind of like predict those kind of situations. And I've heard that there's been a lot of interest on that side, possibly even more interest than the gaming side, for the applications of Spatial OS in that direction. And that kind of stuff, it has implications, and it changes things. It changes the way that it changes not just the way that we kind of like look at things like Spatial OS or like technology like that, and the way that they can be applied, but it also changes like their business strategy. And I think in a lot of situations, something like that would happen. They either don't put as much focus into like game development and stuff like that, and they kind of like shrink away from that industry. But the reason they shrink away from that industry is because they're reapplying their resources somewhere else where they end up being more needed, or where they're getting more funding. But then everybody from the gaming industry is just like, oh, well, they're just completely gone, and they're not actually. Like they're actually just doing something else. Did that happen with Euclidean? No idea. But I have actually still seen Euclidean around. They are still funded. They're doing something. I have no idea what it is, but they're doing something. And then so he says this: voxels revolutionized nothing. I really disagree with that. He says they're used little in development and even less in engines, save for a handful of niche, flat indie titles. I really actually don't agree with that at all. In fact, when you actually look at let's go here in XGI. Wait, hold up. Blue Drake 42 NVIDIA, I believe. Oh, here we go. VXGI. So this is a video that I actually created a long time ago.
What's up, everybody? It's a Blue Drake, and today I'm going to be showing you a revolutionary new software lighting technique known as
And this is the same kind of thing, like this is the same kind of like marketing. I don't know what it is. I go into like kind of like a mode, and I don't really know why I go into that mode. I don't know if it's fun or if it's like subconscious, but I kind of go into that like, what's up, everybody? Blue Drake here, and we're gonna do this fucking presentation. And I sound like I'm sponsored, but I'm really not. And I don't know why I do that. I think it's just kind of fun for me. And it also kind of shows that I can do like professional video. And this is just kind of like what I'm used to, because when you go to like TED Talks or you go to tech presentations, you see people that talk like this. And I think I maybe just picked that up psychologically. So when I make a video talking about tech showcases and stuff, I'm like, oh, well, I just need to create it the same way because that's what people expect. And I don't really take into consideration that people would maybe like interpret that as me trying to manipulate them, or that I'm like sponsored, because I mean, this video is not sponsored in any way. I just thought it was really cool. But it's actually interesting because it uses voxel technology in a completely different way that you're used to. So here,
global
we'll look at this.
illumination, or VXGI for short. Developed by NVIDIA, VXGI is the newest cutting-edge development for simulating light in next-generation video games and modeling software.
And here's the thing, I actually think you are going to see this kind of technology considerably more often going forward. I mean, we're looking at all of these games coming out nowadays that are using refraction in their gameplay. Like, I think Battlefield 5, you can see the reflection of soldiers through the window. In what's that other game? There's like this Russian game called like Astral something or something. It's got a bunch of robots in it, and it looks really kind of interesting and like artistic, but they also use refracting a lot, and that's now just being implemented into games now. And this video came out, I put this video out in 2014. This video came out 4 years ago, and now this kind of technology is just now getting that kind of traction. But here, continue watching.
You can expect a more realistic interpretation of light in three-dimensional environments with
I love describing stuff like
this and more complex
This is fun
shadows.
for me.
But enough with me just hyping this up. Let's talk about the specifics of how it works and why you should be excited. Firstly, let's take a look at lighting as you're used to seeing it in video games now. This is known as direct lighting and is the simplest way of calculating how light interacts with a 3D environment. As we all know,
and see, this is the kind of stuff where a lot of people get upset and they're like, oh man, Blue Drake's trying to sound intellectual. And I try my best to explain it the way that I can. Like, I try to check up on my resources. I have a lot of people that I work with who are considerably smarter than me. And I always hit them up and I'm like, hey, am I saying this right? Because I'm trying to be informative. I'm not trying to be like misleading. And I do get things wrong sometimes, and I do say things, but I really do try to make it as accurate and informative as I possibly can. I'm not intentionally trying to mislead people, but I do enjoy describing it, and I think that sometimes I kind of get carried away with like, because I listen to TED Talks, I listen to a lot of stuff like that, and I kind of like to create content that's similar to that, because it's genuinely just, I enjoy doing that.
Light continues to move after hitting an object.
I like geeking out about this kind of shit and sounding like I'm geeking out about it.
The lighting bounces off and continues to reflect throughout the room until it runs out of energy. However, calculating all of those reflections in a game is too much math to handle in real time. So the solution? Direct lighting, where light emits from a single point, and as soon as the light encounters an object, it is deleted without the program taking any reflections into account. Now let's take a look at voxels, those little things you're probably aware of from the game Minecraft. A voxel is nothing more than a three-dimensional pixel and is used to simplify environments. It has been around for a lot longer than Minecraft and has been being used for all sorts of things, from games to graphics engines such as this one. Now let's take another look at the direct lighting approach using voxel technology. Now in this demonstration, while it may not be nearly as visually impressive, the lighting information is considerably simplified, and we can use this to our advantage.
And see, this is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. This is the kind of application of voxel technology outside of specifically using it in like a game like Minecraft. And even though Notch, the creator of Minecraft, I mean, he didn't pioneer the idea of voxel technology. I mean, he utilized that idea from elsewhere and then applied it into a video game. But that's not necessarily what I am talking about. You know, like, it doesn't really matter where the idea that came from, but I think that the concept itself is really powerful. But anyway, here, we'll continue watching this.
Here, when the light moves across the model, the light-sensitive voxels engage and disengage depending on whether a ray of light is physically hitting them. By running the simulation in the background, invisible to the player, we can use the simplified lighting model to trigger more advanced lighting techniques. In this demonstration, each invisible voxel activated by the direct light now emits light of its own, reflecting off of the red and green walls to the sides of these two spheres. While the voxels themselves are invisible, we can use their information to generate light points in this more sophisticated 3D environment. However, this demonstration only shows the reflective light emitted by the voxels. Let's see how everything looks when you...
See, I really am trying. Like, I'm trying to be actually informative because I'm simultaneously like, I think this is both really cool and I'm trying to like actually explain it accurately because I want to do the product justice because it is really cool. Like, it's really an interesting product.
Direct lighting with this new advanced reflective lighting model.
And now you can see everything together.
Now here, we can see the final composition between the direct lighting and our new voxel-based global illumination system. As you can see, when compared to direct lighting, VXGI creates a considerably more vibrant and realistic environment. In the reflections of each sphere, you can see the composition of the entire room, which is not only visually impressive, but may also lead to more complex gameplay mechanics in graphically intensive games. Additionally, this entire lighting system has minimal impact on performance thanks to simplified voxel technology. Imagine playing Battlefield 5 and seeing the dim
You know, it's funny, look at this. I had no idea about this. This was released, like, I'm not lying. This was released in 2014. And I can't believe I actually said this. Somebody pointed this out to me. Imagine Battlefield 5. I can't believe that I actually called it. When did this, 4 years ago? Hold up, somebody said this recently. Somebody made a comment and they were like, holy shit, he called it. Like, come on, YouTube. Oh yeah, here we go. I actually didn't even I got this comment and I was like, why are people still watching this video? And I clicked on it and I was like, oh shit, I didn't even know I said that.
Imagine playing Battlefield 5 and seeing the dim reflection of an enemy soldier through a window, and using that to gain the element of surprise and take the advantage in a firefight.
You know, see, so that's why I like making these videos. Like, even I do my best to understand it and I do my best to like illustrate it and explain it and do it justice. But even if I like don't have a complete understanding of it, as hard as I absolutely try, just like looking at it, just kind of like trying to understand it, you're able to like predict things way far out. You know, like, it's crazy. I didn't even realize that I had made that prediction. And the reason that I currently, there's a lot of situations where you guys will notice stuff like this will happen, and I'll just make predictions. And the reason I make predictions is because I just look at this kind of stuff, and I think about how it can be applied, and I try my best to actually understand it. And even if I don't have a complete understanding of it, having even like a minimal understanding of it, or trying to understand it more, is massively valuable because it gives you a better idea of what is going on in the industry and what is going to happen with the industry. So anyways, that's just kind of an example of voxel technology used outside of voxel. So when somebody says something like, you know, this, when somebody says voxels revolutionized nothing, I mean, I guess that depends on your definition of what revolutionized means. But I really would disagree. Like, the types of games that have come out from voxel technology, when you look at Space Engineers, when you look at Minecraft, when you look at all of the other voxel games, even a lot of them that are like just clones of Minecraft, it's made a massive impact on the gaming industry. A massive impact. Like, these are games that are massively successful, and these have spawned entire communities, and it's not just like a single game. Like, it's a whole genre now. I mean, I would call that revolution, like, or a revolution. I don't really, I mean, I don't really know what your bar for what a revolution is actually or not, but I don't know. I think I would define that as one. And he says seamless MMOs existed back when you were still blocking your phone line while you played them. And that's true. And I actually get really frustrated when people say things like this because I mentioned this in the video. In the video, I state, like, this is nothing new, but the fact that it's open to the public and that it's licensable is. You know, yeah, there's games like World of Warcraft, there's games like EVE Online, there's games like fucking EverQuest, and there's been massively multiplayer games all this time, but it doesn't mean that an indie studio can just make one using that tech. You know, every single time that something like EverQuest or PlanetSide 2 or anything like that is made, it's made completely from scratch, which is kind of a massive waste of time and resources. Like, how many times are we going to have individually isolated companies redeveloping the same thing over and over and over again. And that's where you go along that progression until you get something like Spatial OS. Spatial OS is the first company that's created like an MMO solution and has made it available to everyone and has created a business model where that's possible. I think that's really cool. And it's one of those things where, like, when I talk about what Spatial OS is capable of, I'm not saying that that's something that like has never been done before, but it's something that like now anybody can use, and that's actually the coolest thing about it, in my opinion. And then he says, if you squeal about scalability one more time, we've already talked about scalability and how I feel about that. Several thousand devs have squealed before you and subsequently failed to deliver, and that's absolutely true. And again, like there's the vast majority of times, there's definitely going to be um, people that like try to mislead or kind of like oversell things that aren't really the case. But they're still fun to talk about, and they're still interesting to talk about. And like the 5% of times that it actually doesn't go down like that, and they're actually right, the payoff is massive. The payoff is massive. So I still think that it's worth it to kind of like nerd out about these things because you never know. You never know. I mean, who would have guessed that like when the iPod came out, that it would turn into like an iPhone that has now so revolutionized society? And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would still be like, the iPhone hasn't revolutionized society, and it's like, what the fucking, like, how do you define revolution? Like, I don't really know. It's subjective. I'm drinking, by the way. Sorry, this is spiced rum. It's really good. Uh, you have shown nothing, and that is what I figure the entire thing amounts to. And I just think, I don't know. I feel like this is somebody just kind of being uh just kind of negative. Like and it's not wrong for them to be negative or anything like that, but just sometimes people say stuff like that and they're just like, and everything you said is bullshit. And it's just like, okay, man. Like I don't okay, I'm not really against that, but like I wish we could all at least be nice about it. I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with you, but it is still something that I like to make videos on. So this is another one. The tech is already known. I feel like you are a secret representative to draw in investors. Definitely a real concern. And I'm not gonna lie. When I made the Spatial OS video, we all talked about it internally. I was like, dude, they are gonna love this video because this is probably gonna help them a lot. So I take that. I understand that. And that was one of the reasons that I was kind of in talks with them to potentially make that video a sponsored video, because I knew that that would be really useful to them. But at the end of the day, I realized that I kind of wanted to make it anyways. I wanted to make that video anyways. That video is not sponsored. I'm not a secret representative. In fact, I've been in a lot of situations where people think I'm a secret representative, and I'm not, and it actually harms the reputation of that product. And I've been trying to figure out how to like grapple with that because I get accused of that all the time, and I don't know how to convince people. Because again, like if you were to tell Spatial OS like, "Oh, does Blue Drake work for you?" and then they'd be like, "No, he doesn't," and then they'd be like, "You're lying," like they're gonna get frustrated with that too. And that's absolutely not the case. I'm not employed by them in any way. Obviously, they're making a product that I think is really cool, and we're even working on games on Spatial OS now. And I really want to do that because I think and it's not because I was paid to do that by them, but I do think that it's something that I want to get to know more. It's a product that I want to get to know more. And since I've made these videos, and obviously since we're making some games on their platform now and using their tech now, obviously they really liked the video, and maybe that gives me some kind of like benefit where I get treated better. I have no idea, but I can tell you as much as you can trust me, that video was not sponsored. Um, I agreed. It kind of sounds sponsored, like all my videos, but it wasn't. In the same way that Nvidia didn't sponsor me to make the NXGI video. I wish they did. That'd be awesome, but they didn't. Let's see, this one. This guy says, I really wish Blue didn't ramble so much. I love the videos, but it actually gives me anxiety how he takes forever to make a point. And here's the thing. People like this isn't really a hater comment. Oh, which I'm not sharing my screen. This isn't really a hater comment. I get a lot of comments like this, which are just kind of frustrating. And I'm frustrated on both sides. Like I'm frustrated for them, and I'm frustrated on my side too. Because like I get it. There's some people that don't like the fact, because I do. I ramble. Sometimes I don't necessarily ramble, but I just take a lot longer to explain something that a lot of people think is like obvious, and I shouldn't spend as much time explaining. And look, I gotta say it like this. I feel like a lot of people, I feel like you all don't necessarily know what it is like to be on my side of the fence. Because it is very hard, I have found over time, to make a single video that pleases everyone. Because think about it, this is YouTube we're talking about, okay? This is YouTube. This isn't like the fucking You know, this isn't like NASA, or like I'm not making a video for like the people at SpaceX to watch. I'm making this video for the public, for everybody on the internet. Like the scum of the fucking universe are going to be watching this video. And you know, people that are just like, I don't want to say dumb as a doorknob, but it's fucking YouTube. Dumb as a goddamn doorknob. And it's really hard to make a video that makes everybody happy. There's always going to be somebody that's like, "Man, you've taken too long to explain this." And then there's also going to be somebody that's always like, "I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about, and you didn't go into enough detail, and you're fucking stupid." You know, so like it's really hard to balance. And I feel like the reason I make the videos the way that I make them is because that is the best middle ground I have been able to find. Um, Even sometimes when I reiterate kind of like the same point in a slightly different way, one of the reasons I do that is if I don't do that, people misunderstand me. So like I'll say something once and then they'll just misinterpret it. But if I say the same thing different ways like 3 times, then there's like no fucking way that they could misinterpret that, you know? Like so it's one of those things where it's like the reason that's happened is because it's like a middle ground. And I don't know how, like, I wish I could tailor a video to every single specific person and have, like, for the people that want the video to be shorter and more concise, it could be, and for the people that don't really get it. And there's even other reasons why I kind of, like, make the videos long-winded and why I go into, like, excruciating detail about certain things. There's a lot of situations where, like, I'll make a claim, or I'll make an accusation, or I'll make a prediction that to some companies or studios is controversial. And if they have the ability to, they will retaliate. You know, like they'll be like, "Oh, he's lying. Oh, this is not true. Oh, this is, he didn't put any thought into this. He's just saying this kind of like hot-headedly, and he hasn't really thought about it." And one of the things that I try to do is I really try to go out of my way, and it's like, look, if I'm going to say something that's provocative, if I'm going to say something that's kind of like eliciting a potential response out of these people that don't like this idea, I want to make sure that it's I want to make sure that it's finely articulated, and not just finely articulated, but very like thoroughly articulated and thoroughly explained. And I think sometimes people think that that's me just kind of rambling, but for me it's me hitting that middle ground, as much of a middle ground as I can possibly find. So the people that want to know something quickly, like it's not a 40, 50 hour, 2 hour video, because I could fucking do that. You have no idea. Like fuck, even this video is already 30 minutes. Like, and this video is probably going to be super long because I don't have the time to edit this. But when you look at, so that video that I made about Hell Let Loose, I took 7 hours to make that video. 7 hours. And I've gotten to this point where like I kind of agree. I get really I kind of psych myself out now because I know when I release a video, there's always going to be somebody that's like, "I don't like this," or "You took too long," or "You took too short," or whatever. And it gets to this point where I really go out of my way to try and get exactly the right amount of information in that video that is going to give the least amount of people problems with me. But there will always be somebody because it's impossible. It's impossible to make a single video that satisfies everybody. It's just literally impossible. And I wish more people would kind of like appreciate that and know that like I really do try to put thought into some of these videos. Obviously, I can't spend 7 hours per video every day. Like it's just physically impossible. I can't do that. Which is also why like I don't upload those kinds of videos as often anymore because it takes so much time. But yeah, that's kind of something that I wish people would talk about as well. So like I feel for you. I'm it's a shame and I'm kind of frustrated that you feel this way. Uh, but at the same time, like it's one of those things where like I wish I could improve the video for you, but if I could go back and re-release that video, at least now, I don't think I would change a single thing. Like I actually think it's doing its job. The vast majority of people like the video, the vast majority of people understand it, and I can't really, I'm not even capable of being able to figure out what a better version of that video would be. So when people get frustrated, it's just like, man, I'm sorry, like I don't know what the fuck to do. So anyways. Moving on. So this guy, first of all, just get to the fucking point. Again, somebody who's kind of frustrated because the video is not like short enough or fast enough. Like I don't know what to do because, uh, um, You're bobbling so much nonsense. Secondly, this sounds like you're advertising for them. This is the video. This is a response to the video about Hell Let Loose, specifically best World War II game ever. Hell Let Loose, Hell Let Loose, Hell Let Loose. Over dramatization, etc. Talking about the developers if there's some kind of gods. This is some very bad commenting. And again, like the last thing, this is very like this. I don't like it when people just like kind of like throw like a, because like how am I gonna respond to that? It's just like, okay, so you think the video's bad? I don't know what to. It's just kind of like throw an insult in at the end. This happens all the time. But again, like I'm not advertising for Hell Let Loose. I'm not paid by Hell Let Loose. Um, I do. I have a lot of frustrations with the rest of the gaming industry because there's a lot of games that are very close to what I want, but are not absolutely there. And there's a lot of other aspects as well. For instance, like we host community servers, we host events, we do all sorts of things. And there are a lot of other games out there that are very similar to Hell Let Loose and might even be great games. But there's some aspects of them that make it impossible to kind of like have a community there in the way that we would want to have a community. You know, even in fact, here's some of the kinds of things that I've started to notice more and more and more about gaming communities. Um, there is a rising issue where as gaming communities are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, you know, you look at a lot of these indie titles compared to something like Battlefield 5, it's made by a team that is much smaller, it's made by a company that is much smaller, the community is smaller as well, like there's less players, which means that the developers are much more involved with their communities, which is sometimes a good thing, but also sometimes a bad thing. Because I've been seeing a rising issue where developers are kind of like abusing like privileges, where they like game ban people from the entire game. Because I don't know if you guys know this, like through Steam, we have the ability, like if you release a game on Steam, I have a game on Steam, and I don't even really agree with this. Like you can game ban people for any reason. You can ban them off the forums, you can ban them from the game, even if they've purchased the game, and even outside of Steam, if you implement systems where you're allowed to shut down people's servers, you're allowed to get back-end access to people's servers, where you're able to like shadow ban people from like game servers and stuff like that. There's a lot of and a lot of people have actually I've mentioned that a few times like on the podcast, and some people have been like, give proof, where is that happening? And I don't want to do that in this video because obviously if I were to talk about specific examples, it would be incredibly controversial, and that's not something that I really want to get into right now. But hopefully you can appreciate that that is possible. It is very possible to create server files and systems and master servers that are manipulatable by the developers of that game and can be abused. Like they have the potential to be abused, and in many situations they absolutely are. And it's getting to the point where one of the reasons that I like Hell Let Loose so much isn't just because I think it's going to be a good game, but it's going to be a good game that has a community and has like a development team that I trust. Of people that I don't think are going to like persecute communities that I play in or servers that I play in or try to like manipulate situations, or at least not in a way that I think is going to affect me and my community. And that's a big unavoidable thing. So it's one of those situations where it's like, no, I'm not paid by Hell Let Loose. No, I'm not advertising Hell Let Loose. I do believe in the game though, and I do really want to have a community in that game, and I want that game to succeed. Absolutely. But I don't really know what to do outside of that. I don't really feel like I'm babbling about nonsense. Like I feel like we've put forward very specific examples. In fact, just now I'm gonna be making a video about this almost immediately after I make this video here. But if you look at this, so this is an announcement that just came out, and I am under non-disclosure to Steam, which is very frustrating because I have my game Iron Armada on Steam, because we got greenlit a long time ago, and in order to get greenlit and in order to get on the dashboard before they got rid of the green light, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which sucks, and I hate that. I hate all of those things, but I can't talk about a lot of things. So like I can't talk about the Steam revenue share. I can't talk about like a lot of the things that would like to talk about, but I can't because I'm under non-disclosure. But this came out yesterday. And when you scroll down, Epic Games, so Epic Games, the creators of Unreal Engine 4, are now creating their own game store, like their own competitor to Steam, just like Origin, but I want to show you this because they said this in public, and I don't know how they're getting away with this, but this is something. So look at this. If you are to release and this is me quoting Epic Games. This is not me disclosing information that I know, okay? This is public information. Nobody fuck with me. But if you are to release an Unreal Engine 4 game on Steam, your revenue share is immediately 35%. Because as Epic Games is showing here, Steam takes a flat 30%. And then Unreal Engine takes another 5% off of the top of that. So that's 35% off the bat for your game on Steam, which is massive. That is a massive. And then on top of that, like if you give up another 30%, like for God knows what services. Because I've seen a lot of games. There are games on right now. I would love to talk about specific examples, but again, that is not something that I want to get into right now. But there's games on the marketplace, big shooter games that give up 35%, and then they give 30% up for a framework, and then they give 5% up for everything else. Like Perforce, Vivox, fucking I don't know. There's publishing, etc. So like these are people that are giving up like see what hold up how much is that? Let's do the math here. So 65% minus 5, yeah, so that's 70% of your game. That is massive. And that's one of the reasons. So when we brought up examples about like why I believe in Hell Let Loose, that's one of the big reasons because like I've done the math. I've talked with them. I know what their business and they have less developers, they have less people to pay, and yet they're capable of obviously doing the same amount as larger teams, and yet they're paying significantly less people and they've agreed to considerably smaller revenue shares. Unfortunately, they're still on Steam. So like honestly, here's the crazy thing. Like look at this deal, dude. Look at this fucking deal, man. Epic Games. If you release your game on the Epic Games launcher, you only pay 12%. And that's including your Unreal Engine fee. You pay 12%, dude. 12 fucking percent for Unreal Engine. That's massive. So you get 80% of your revenue instead of 88% instead of 65. That is going to have an impact. That is going to have an impact. And this is the kind of stuff that I look at. This is the kind of, because you can sit there and you can talk about how developers have passion and how developers love their game all fucking day. But like, unless you look at the actual math of the situation, unless you look at their like financial infrastructure and like the decisions they're making and the platforms that they're on and the business arrangements that they have, like that is going to have an equal, if not greater effect on that game than like passion. And when I look at games like Hell Let Loose, like not only is it the kind of game that I want to play, not only is it the place where I kind of want my community, but it's also a place where like I think they're going to succeed because they're making much more efficient business decisions. And I feel like I'm pretty specific about that in that video. Like I feel like I'm not just bringing up superfluous points. Like that's pretty like hard evidence and pretty specific things. And when you look at stuff like this, I think this is going to continue. I'm going to make a whole separate video about this because I think Epic Games releasing this is going to have a ripple effect. Because Steam is already kind of getting battered. Steam is getting battered because of Origin and because of Ubisoft's thing, and then fucking Humble Bundle has their own thing, and then GOG. Like Steam used to be the only person on the market, and they had like a near 100% market share, and they are losing. Even if Steam is growing in like success every year, they're losing market share. So like the industry is growing faster than they are growing with it, and people are starting to take more and more of a market share that they are losing. And these are the reasons why. The fact that Epic Games, and this is how progress happens. This is why I believe in competition. Like I think Steam is cool and it's nice that we all have everything on the same like platform, but I think competition is important because these are not superfluous numbers. These are not like this is disgusting, dude. Like this is like you release a UE4 game on Steam and you give up 35%, but you release it on UE4 and it's only 12. And look at Unity too, 12. That's disgusting, dude. That is going to have a massive impact. Massive. Massive. And Epic Games already has like a mod API and like the SDK integration and all of that shit. That's going to be huge. That's going to be huge. Like this is, in fact, Valve is really fucking up in my opinion. Because when you think about it, man, like think about when Valve first came around. The reason Steam and Valve was so successful because they had Source. So like you could create a game on Source, which was one of the only engines that was around at the time, and you could release it on Steam. And now UE4 it has like the same business model, but it's better. So now, instead of like, and that's the thing, Valve has given up on Source. I haven't seen any new Source games, and I haven't seen any updates to the Source engine to compete with things like Unity and UE4. They've completely given up on that, and I don't know why. Because that is the reason they're losing market share. Like, it's funny because some people are like, oh, there's nothing we could do, competition's going to happen. It's like, no, dude, these people, like, you gave up on like the biggest aspects of your business, and this is now the consequences, because this is Epic Games are the creators of UE4. So UE4 to the Epic Games launcher is like what Source was to Steam when it started, and that is a very successful formula. Like having a launcher and an entire engine integrated with that, that's like a full service solution. This is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. So anyways, moving on, like I don't know what to say. I feel like this is kind of a little bit it's funny because it says like over dramatization. Like I feel like this is kind of dramatic. I try to be as specific as I can. I don't feel like I'm advertising for them, other than the fact that like obviously I'm invested in their success, but I'm not advertising for them because in order for it to be an advertisement, I have to be getting paid by them. I'm not. So I don't know. I think that that's just kind of like natural promotion. Like that's just me believing in the game for reasons that I think are going to benefit me and my business and my community, and that's why I'm making a video supporting them because I want them to succeed. Because if they succeed, then I succeed, and that's how I make the vast majority of all my decisions, if not all of them. So, anyways, moving on. This guy says, I think YouTube should enable a feature that lets YouTuber test their IQ, and you could filter videos by IQ to avoid listening to people talking without having anything to say. From scratch, full stack, what kind of bullshit is that? Can we stop with YouTube video game intellectuals? And this is just the kind of stuff where it's just like, these kind of comments are really frustrating me because let me tell you this. This is what we call, like we have a word for this now. This is the Rick syndrome, is what this is. Uh, we see a lot of comments like this where it's kind of like the anti-intellectual because I'm an intellectual kind of comment where it's like I wish I could only talk to people who are as smart as I am or stuff like that, or like I wish I could like sort people by IQ so I can only talk to people with like my IQ or higher. And it's just like this really awkward kind of like self-oriented or like I don't know, like self masturbation, is that the right word? Kind of like idea where like this isn't really doing anything for anybody. And when you look at things like from scratch, full stack, what kind of bullshit is that? I don't really know why he's saying these things. Can we stop with YouTube video game intellectuals? It's one of those stuff where it's like, look, if you don't want to watch the video, feel free to not watch the video. I've complained about this a lot in the past where I've been like, look, I don't want you to watch my video any more than I could. Like, if I could have an IQ tool where I could only have a certain people of a certain IQ, like, watch my videos, that would be great, you know? Like, then, and I'm not even sure if this dude would end up qualifying, you know? Like, that's the irony of the Rick syndrome, is because a lot of the people who try to use the Rick syndrome, it's because they're actually insecure about their own intelligence. So how do they do that? They compensate. The most intelligent people I know, the people with the highest IQ that I know are the most silent about it. They don't talk about it. They don't belittle other people about like not being as smart and stuff like that. The people who I see who do that are the least intelligent. And even if you were to like try and quantify intelligence, because I feel like trying to quantify intelligence is kind of like pointless. Because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of different things that make people successful. There's a lot of different things that make people that make the things that people say like have value. It doesn't necessarily even mean their IQ is inherently like tied to whether what they're saying actually is worth listening to or not. Like there's a lot of stupid people out there that I would love to listen to because their perspective of the world is actually interesting. And I think people with intelligence know that. Like for instance, like if you like, here's just kind of ridiculous. This is kind of like a hypothetical example that people have like brought up before when when you confront people with the Rick syndrome or whatever. Like let's say you're a manager of a uh, garbage collection department or agency or whatever. Are you going to go around like belittling all of your garbage collector people and be like, you don't know as much as I do, and like I'm so much smarter, and then fail to run your business because you don't know anything about garbage collecting and these guys are not telling? Or are you going to go to those garbage collection guys and be like, hey, tell me about your experience, tell me about what you know about, because I don't know anything about this craft, even if it's like a low skill craft or something like that. It's going to be easier for me to interface with you and to get that information from somebody regardless of how I feel about your intelligence, all that stuff. So like, I don't know, this is how I feel about that kind of stuff. I feel like these kinds of comments are not just kind of like self gratification of somebody just kind of trying to put other people down because they're insecure about like their own intelligence, but at the same time, like it doesn't really make any sense because are you trying to learn more about the industry or not? If not, then just find somewhere else. Like you can go to like TED Talks, you can find other places to like find content that's interesting. To like follow the people that you think are interesting. There's more than enough outlets online. More than enough outlets online where you can find people who hold like master degrees and bachelors in science if that's the kind of stuff that you respect. But if you're the kind of person that's just randomly browsing YouTube and just landing on random videos and then complaining about the videos that you've landed on instead of actually going out of your way to follow the people that are qualified, because it's not like that's impossible to do. In fact, I think this is why it's even more ironic, because like if you were more intelligent, you would know that you have control over your viewing experience. You can find people that have bachelor degrees in science, masters, or whatever, and then you can sort your feed by that. So if you're landing on a video that you find out you don't want to watch, it's nobody else's fault. It's nobody else's fault. It's your own fault. And just bashing everybody else for being like stupid or not having as high of an IQ as you, it just makes you look insecure and makes it look like, okay, well, maybe are you worried about like what your IQ is? Because obviously if you didn't want to be here, if you were smart enough, there would be more than enough ways for you to not be here. And now you just complaining about it makes it awkward for everybody because we're all sitting here standing like, okay, well this guy is obviously like not as smart and yet he's bashing everybody else for like, it's just awkward. It's awkward for me. It's awkward for everybody. If you think I'm stupid, that's fine. I don't care. But like there are ways for you to not watch my videos. Like that is possible. So I don't know what to do. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing. Because the next thing he says is from scratch, full stack. What kind of bullshit is that? And I think that it's pretty straightforward. So full stack is a term. In fact, I'm going to tell you, I'm on the same page. We make fun of this kind of stuff internally all the time. Because it's fun to make fun of, but it's also, like I said at the beginning of this video, like I think it's still kind of like important. Um, like when you look at scalability, like yeah, a lot of people use scalability in a context where it's like completely nonsensical, but that doesn't mean that it's not a real thing. And when you look at full stack, yeah, I mean one of the things that we make fun of internally is like we've gone to like a lot of tech shows and trade shows and stuff like that, and you'll see a lot of booths there that are interfacing with people that don't have as much of a tech background. So in order to like try and catch investors and catch like venture capitalist interest, like they'll use a lot of buzzwords, and it gets really funny. Like one time we like picked up like a pamphlet, and it was like, do you want to create a synergistic solution to database your algorithm? And it's just like, fucking what? It's just completely like I can't tell if they're just like way fucking above me or if they're actually being nonsensical. So I think there are like a lot of situations where like yeah, that's poignant to bring up. And I think sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's not. Like and I don't think it means like those words don't have meaning. So for instance, like when you look up the term like full stack. So full stack um, what full stack is, a full stack developer is an engineer who can handle all the work of databases, servers, systems engineering, and clients. Depending on the project, what customers need may be a mobile stack, a web stack, or a native application stack. And what this means is when you're a full stack developer, this is my interpretation of it. If I'm wrong, please feel free. I've talked with a lot of other programmers about this. I even actually, before I made that video, I literally talked to one of my programmers that I work with, and I was like, "Hey, I'm saying this right?" And he was like, "Yeah, a lot of people use it in kind of like vague terms, and that kind of makes sense." Well, basically, what a full stack developer is a full stack is somebody that understands the entire spectrum of delivering a product. So like when you look at making a video game includes a lot of different skill sets. But there's a very kind of like specific, like minimum viable skill set, where if you know a list of things, you will have the ability to take something from nothing all the way to like a deployment. Um, because and this is, you see this a lot. So for instance, like when you look at a lot of games that are made by a single person, that person is a full stack developer because they understand the entire spectrum of creating a product. And in a lot of cases, when you see a game like that, when you see a game that's created by a single person, um, it might lack in certain values. Like maybe the art will be shit because that's where programmer art comes from. Like maybe the gameplay won't be as like interesting, and and maybe the assets won't be as cool, but it'll still be a complete product. And that's what we talk about when we talk about full stack. So when I look at development teams, there's a lot of development teams out there, especially now that there's more like licensable frameworks. So for instance, when you look at some UE4 games, when you look at the marketplace, when you look at the UE4 marketplace, and when you look at all of the systems out there that you can license from third-party companies, you can create a team right now that is not full stack and just outsource the vast majority of your work. And when you outsource the vast majority of your work and then you like supplement what you're not capable of doing in order to create a full product, yeah, you've created a full product, but you're not really a full stack developer. And I think a full stack developer is kind of like the same. I think a full stack developer is kind of like the same conundrum as saying like from scratch. Because that's the other thing he brings up. Like he was like from scratch, what kind of, and there's a lot of, I think I pinned a comment where I like described like what, because there was some people that were like they're not making this from scratch, they're using Unreal Engine 4, and it's like, well, okay, well Unreal Engine 4 isn't from scratch because it's built on C++ and all of these other things that Unreal Engine 4 didn't make, and even those people that created like the C++ language, like they didn't create that from scratch. C++ just interfaces with like hardware that he didn't really make, and it's like it's just kind of like this thing where when you go and Carl Sagan is one of my favorite, like intellectuals and people to like. I love Cosmos and all of that shit. I'm not a big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson, unfortunately. But Carl Sagan said, in order to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Because basically what it means is like there is no such thing as from scratch. Like it doesn't really exist. And whenever you say from scratch, it doesn't really, because from scratch could mean anything depending on the context. That because like in order to create an apple pie from scratch, a lot of people say that like, oh, did you make this from scratch? Oh yeah, I made it from scratch. And it's like, no, you didn't. You went out to the fucking store and you bought all the ingredients. Did you fucking mill the goddamn flour? Like, did you fucking invent wheat? Like it fucking did you like breed the fucking apple trees 30 years ago in order to make this certain type of apple? Like it's fucking impossible. And it's the same thing when you, and I think it still also applies to like kind of like full stack as well, where full stack is kind of like hard. So like what is full stack? Like if you understand an entire spectrum of delivering a product, especially in Unreal Engine 4, like does that mean you don't know, if you don't know how to make your own engine like Unreal Engine 4, is that full stack, or like whatever? And I think that's kind of an interesting conversation to have, and I think that's a good point to bring up. But in this context, when I talk about full stack, I'm talking about it in relation to Unreal Engine 4, and even Hell Let Loose. Like they've outsourced some of their work. They've outsourced some of their stuff. Like their voice system, I believe, is being provided by like Vivox or something like that. I can't remember if Squad is using Vivox as well. I can't remember. I don't think they are, but for some reason I heard something like they were. I don't know. Anyways, so even Hell Let Loose, like they have outsourced some of their work. But in terms of taking a product from nothing in Unreal Engine 4 and then understanding all of the iterations and all of the like the sub, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but like taking Unreal Engine 4 and then developing all of the segments and all of the aspects on like the entire pipeline's another buzzword that I fucking love, from taking something from nothing, and then actually like getting it all the way to deployment and understanding all of the elements in between that. Like that's what we're talking about when we say full stack. Whether that's like an accurate assessment or an accurate word to use, I guess that's debatable. But the reason I think that's important is when you are a quote unquote full stack development team, that means like when something goes wrong. Like let's say you implement a feature and then something goes wrong with like the network replication. Well, if you're not a full stack development team and you're primarily like a content focused development team, like let's say your development team is just animators and modelers and stuff like that that's built on top of a framework and you actually either don't have any programmers at all that understanding the underlying aspect or the programmers you do have are not as capable in those deeper situations. Like if something were to go wrong, like if you're to create like a house or a model or something on the content side, or you're gonna change some gameplay element and then it has like a deep rooted problem in the game that you're not gonna be able to figure out unless you have experience in that full stack of development up to the fucking full product, then you're gonna run into issues QAing that entire situation. And QA is just like quality assurance, like QA testing. Like it's a job. There's a lot of people out there who are QA testers who, and there's entire QA testing teams. Like it's an entire kind of like subgenre within software development. And when you don't have, like, you can do testing and you can say, hey, look, here's a problem and figure out exactly what the problem is. But if you don't have somebody that's actually experienced and capable in those fundamental aspects of your product, because maybe you're built off of some framework or you're outsourcing that stuff, you're not going to be able to fix that problem as easily. So when we're talking about full stack, that's kind of like the I don't know. Actually, let me know. I don't know if there's anything, if I'm saying anything wrong or if I'm like illustrating anything wrong. Please tell me so that way next time I get it right. I mean, this is what I've been doing for years and years and years. It's just learning. Like I like getting things wrong, and then you can just tell me and be like, okay, this is wrong. Well, why? But sometimes I get distrustful because sometimes, like when I see people like this, sometimes I think that they don't actually know what they're talking about. They're just saying that they do, and they're just trying shitting on everybody else because they're insecure about their own intelligence, and that's kind of dangerous. Like those are kind of dangerous people to like talk to because then you waste your time and you're like, oh really, well what am I saying wrong? And then they're like, I don't fucking know, you're just an idiot. And you're just like, am I saying anything wrong, or are you just fucking so anyways, this is kind of another video. You never get to the point, do you? This video could have been 10 minutes. You sidetrack a lot. This just kind of goes back to the original thing that I was saying, where it's like, look, I can't. If I could make a video that was 10 minutes just for you, so like just you could have, but unfortunately I'm making this video for tens of thousands of people and like not everybody's going to be happy. It's going to be impossible. And I wish there was more people that would like accept that. Like it's not that my video could be better. It would just be different, and then there would just be a different subset of people that would be pissed off about it. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Um, and then this one. So this is another thing that I got, Joel King, and he's, I guess, quoting me kind of like how I sound. Before I tell you something about something you might be interested in, let me take a few minutes to talk about myself. I have the smartest ideas. I make the best reviews. I know the best people. I told you this the last time you viewed my content too. Now, let me tell you something once, then twice, and then again in nauseatingly non-specific pseudo-detail, then repeated with no new information, then rephrased again to the same meaning. And actually, this is the kind of stuff that I was talking about to the point, like there's reasons that I do that. Or at least, I mean, that's what I've kind of like learned over time. Then I'll talk about myself some more while belittling most of my audience just for good measure. Now bring it all home with raw hubris and hyperbole. Pretty much every Blue Drake 42 video I've been baited into watching. Every Blue Drake 42 video. And it's just kind of stuff where it's like, it's one of those things where the first thing is like, if you don't want to watch my content, please don't. I have been struggling a lot to like, if you're really at that point where like, you're not really interested in offering any like constructive criticism, or you're complaining about things that like I'm not going to change. Like if you get upset that I kind of like repeat things, or if I make long-winded explanations or stuff like that, or even if I talk like there's some situations like the reason I talk about things in non-specific pseudo detail is because I don't want to give specific examples about a specific situation that could get me into hot water. Like if I start pulling out games and I start saying, and these guys are spending this kind of like revenue share, and like making direct comparisons and be like, oh, and these guys have this team and they don't have that, that's going to be something that's like going to get me into a controversy that like I don't really have time or interest to get into right now. Maybe at some point I do, but like I want to be able to talk about some things without actually getting myself into those problems. And it's one of those things where it's like if you don't accept that, like if you really just don't like my content and you don't want anything to do with it and you don't want to watch it, like I don't want you watching it either. Like if I had the ability to make it so you don't ever watch my video and see my video ever again, if YouTube gave me the video where I could just right click on like a feature, if I could just right click on this dude and be like, never let him watch one of my videos again, I would do that for you. I would absolutely do that. But I can't. And also like it's one of those things where like I understand that some people are upset with the way that I talk and the way that I do videos, but I can't change the kind of video that I make to appeal to a broader audience. I feel like my video is already kind of like created where it's going to appeal to as broad an audience as I can make it. If I were to make it any differently, it's not going to be any better. It's just going to be different. And potentially even appeal to a smaller audience. And I think some people like this, like when he's just kind of like, I guess, mocking me, like this is not really, it's not really doing anything for anybody. Like it's just this really weird. It's kind of, I kind of like take this as like the same thing as like this guy, where like if you think that you're smarter and you think that like I'm stupid and you hate my content and you don't want to watch it, then like I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And let me see if there's some stuff like that he says, because this was on the Hell Let Loose video, and I wish he would actually tell me, because then sometimes I get accusations like this, while belittling most of my audience just for good measure. Like I can't, like I would really want to know, like where did I do that in the Hell Let Loose video? Because it's not like while I was, because again, I spent a lot of time on that video, and it's not like while I was making it, I was like, okay, here's the part where I like shit on my audience. Like I can't think of I can't think of what he is possibly talking about. Like, and I really am trying to like Hell Let Loose. What is this? Hold up. Here it is. So if I go here, like near the end of the video, like what am I saying that could possibly communities? And I'm really excited about that in particular. And before I end this video, I do want to voice it's because they're capable. And when I look for signs of what is going to make a game to that point for itself, the reason that this game can have 100 players and have networked views, I don't know what he's talking about. Like I don't really understand, like, cuz I guess there's a couple of times in the video where I say like people have messaged me saying like the game is going to be terrible or anything like that, but that's not even me like belittling my audience. It's not like I'm saying like, oh man, everybody who watches me is stupid. Like I feel like that would be belittling my audience. So when people say stuff like this, I don't really know like what does that mean? um and I also think like there's a lot of other situations, like I guess people get really really touchy about anything that could be viewed as like egotistical. Like talking about myself or talking about, and I don't really know. So specifically, like before I tell you something that you might be interested in, let me take a few minutes to talk about myself, and then at the end he's like, then I'm going to talk about myself more. Like this is something that people like get really, and I guess I don't really know if this is minority because again, this is just like one guy, and the video, like the vast majority of the people are supportive and are like, oh, this is really interesting. And then every so often I'll get like 5%, I guess, of the comments are like this, where people get really really touchy about anything that they consider to potentially be like egotistical. And I don't really. I feel like there's a kind of like a disconnect there. Like there's a problem because just kind of like with the IQ thing, I feel like that might be something that's being kind of like focused on that's not really there. Um, and I've tried to do like a lot of introspective like thinking about it. It's like, well, am I being egotistical or like, or if I am being egotistical, like, am I being egotistical beyond like how like I feel like everybody needs to be at least slightly egotistical because I feel like in a lot of places people like they make egotistical and like confident like a synonym. Like it's not like I'm going on there and I'm like I'm fucking amazing and y'all are fucking, because he's making it sound like I'm making a video where I'm just like, yo, what's up everybody, Blue Drake. I'm, by the way, I'm fucking hot shit and you all are fucking retarded. Like that's how he make it like am I doing that? Is that how it's being? Because I'm not. It's not like when I'm making a video I'm like, oh man, I really need to make sure I belittle my audience and sound egotistical. Like, is it something that like, because in fact, if anything, when I'm making my video, I'm going really far out of my way to not do that. Like that's on my mind while I'm making the video, and it's like, okay, I need to make sure I don't sound egotistical here because I know that they get fucking pissed off about that. If there's anything that's even like remotely interpreted as egotistical, I need to make sure that they don't like misinterpret this as me like shitting on them. Like that's something that I'm actively thinking about, that I'm making. So when people still kind of like try to perpetuate this idea, it's like, look, am I actually doing that? Or is it just at this point where you're just kind of like saying that because you want to have like a reason to bash either myself or the video or like what the video is covering or something like that? Like I don't really know, because I think there are a lot of situations where like I have to talk about myself, because like if I'm making a video about my opinion of something, I have to talk about myself. There's a lot of people that are going to watch that video that are not going to know who I am or what kind of context I'm talking about this in, or like what kind of relationship I have with that product or the situation. Like, so again, like there's a lot of situations where people are like, "Oh man, this video could have been way shorter." Like, could it have been? Because I don't really think it is. You got to keep in mind, like, there's 20,000 people watching this video, and like, there's a lot of them that aren't going to know who I am. But then again, all of the people who do know who I am, when they watch the video, they're going to be like, "Why are you talking about yourself? We know who you are." And it's like, look, I know you know. Like, I know you know, but I'm trying to cover everybody here. Like, that's why the video's 20 minutes long. And I think there's like this illusion when people watch a video, they think that that video is like just for them. And they forget about the fact that that video has been made for a much broader audience, and that I need to cover a whole bunch of things that they may not even be aware of. Like, or that things that are kind of almost even like subconscious. Like when I talk about a little bit about myself, that's for the people who don't know who I am, because there's going to be a lot of people that have literally never even heard of me before watching these kinds of videos. You know, like when I talk about when I repeat something like 3 times, that's for the kinds of people that maybe don't understand what I'm talking about and would maybe misinterpret it. But if I restate the same thing 3 times over, then it's going to be like almost completely impossible to misinterpret it, because I'm saying it like in a slightly different way, but iterating like the same point. So it's going to be impossible to like misunderstand it. So people won't be able to twist my words. That's a big thing. And then when I talk about in like pseudo non-specific detail, when I get into pseudo non-specific detail, it's usually you'll notice that, because I love going into detail. Like I would love to make a video and be like, "Yo, this studio is paying this much for this fucking thing. They spent this much. This is their team. Their fucking programmer is like Joe Schmanberg. He has this fucking background. He went to this school. He did these projects. He failed on this one. This is why he's not like capable." Like I'd love to fucking do that, but I'm not gonna fucking do that, because that's going to piss a bunch of people off and it's going to make people uncomfortable. And I'm trying to tackle the point while also not while also being at least a minimum level of having a minimum level of courtesy. Because look, at the same time, like, yeah, because there's some people that are like, "Dude, you should do that. Like you should fucking like crucify people and like go on," like, but it's at the same time like, I know some people think that I'm just interested in drama, and I'm just interested in like, and to a level, like I do enjoy drama and I do enjoy that. But like I know not everybody enjoys that, and I also have a limit myself. Like my limit might be higher than everybody else, but I'm not like this I love drama for fucking ever. Like there are some times when it's just like, man, I want to chill out. And I respect the fact that there's other people like that as well. And when I make these videos, I try to be vague on purpose. Like obviously I need to cover that topic. I need to cover that information, but I'm trying to be vague on purpose. Like I'm not trying to go after specific teams, specific studios, at least not yet, because like they haven't the competitive, like they're just competing. Like they're not really evil or anything like that. Like I don't think that calling them out and like really attacking people and making them uncomfortable and making their lives miserable, and drawing like obscene unnecessary attention to like the details of products is really, I don't even think it would really do anything. I feel like I can accomplish the same thing with kind of like vague details and have everybody else fill in the blanks in their head. You know, like depending on the studios you know, depending on the situations you've been in, a lot of people probably understand that there are studios like that. And there are, like, when I talk about something in pseudo detail, there are situations like that that maybe you have experience in that I don't even need to talk about publicly because you're going to be able to fill in those blanks with your own experience. And at the same time, I won't have to, like, actually, like, like specifically call people out. Like I don't want to, because it's going to make them miserable. And then like a lot of people have like social anxiety. This is a big problem as well. My channel has been this kind of weird thing where there have been situations where because I'm okay with attention. I don't necessarily like attention all the time. Sometimes it like gets annoying and like I want to just fuck off and like not have anything to do with it. Like, and I can relate to other people like that. As well. But I can deal with it. Like I can deal with attention. I've experienced in that. Like it's been my livelihood. But there's a lot of people who don't, and there's a lot of people who don't like, especially programmers. They're especially people who work on like the reason they became a programmer is because they don't like interacting with people. And it gives them social anxiety. And I've actually been in situations where I have talked about something that I thought was completely innocuous, where I'm like, hey, here's a specific game or here's a specific situation um, that I think is either controversial or whatever, and here's the person that's behind it, and that person like does not that really uh, what's a good word? I don't want to say like destroys them because it doesn't like destroy them. I guess it depends. Sometimes it really does. Like depending on their social anxiety. Like if I make a video and I call somebody out, like that really can fuck with their calm because they might have some kind of like social anxiety and make a YouTuber like calling them out and then having all of this unwanted like all of this attention and they don't like talking with people or they maybe have like social problems and stuff like that. There's been a lot of situations where that's happened and I try my best when I make these videos now as much as I can to not elicit that problem. Like if there's somebody out there that doesn't like the attention and they want to like just kind of be alone, um, I try not to do that. Now there are some situations where like it's completely unavoidable and like I have to talk about a specific situation or a specific person. And there's some people who like deserve it and like deserve to be called out even if they do have those kinds of problems. But I feel like that's kind of like um like it's one of those. I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with it being like unavoidable. Like if you're gonna do something that's gonna have like an impact on people's lives or a negative impact on the product, like you're gonna have to be called out. Like you've set yourself up where you kind of like deserve that. Like I guess deserve is a strong word, but like you guys get what I'm saying. But when I talk about like things in pseudo detail and stuff like that, these are all the things that I'm taking into consideration that I have to take in consideration. And I think sometimes it results, yeah, in like a slightly vague video where maybe I talk about myself too much and I repeat certain points. And sometimes I'm a little bit too vague. But like it's because I'm trying to make a product that is going to appeal to as many people as possible. And that is basically the reality of the situation. So, all right. That's it for episode 1. This video is an hour and 16 minutes. I'm not going to edit it down because I don't have time to edit these videos, which is why we're doing this like little podcast thing, because I literally just don't have time to edit this stuff. um, so if you enjoy this, let me know. Don't complain about how long it is because it's intentionally long. That's why I'm not uploading it as a main video, although I'm sure somebody's not going to watch this entire thing and they're still going to complain about it. And yeah, let me know if this is the thing. So yeah. Gonna create another video eventually, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, cheers.